Ryan Christopherson here with the Cheap Seats. I am here with baseball's all-time hit king, Pete Rose. So, your nickname during your playing days was Charlie Hustle, very appropriate as you went full speed. How did you develop that attitude?
Well, I think growing up, watching my father play sports, I played the same way he did. And by the way, he's the only person I've ever idolized in my life. But I was lucky because he was a ball player. I was the bat boy. He was a football player. I was a water boy. He was a basketball player. I was the ball boy. So growing up in the 40s and 50s, all we had to do was sports. We didn't have iPads. We didn't have cell phones. Didn't have computers. None of that stuff was around. So we spent our time at the ballpark.
Yeah, your dad sounds like a great role model.
He was.
And really, you did a great job on the field, carrying yourself as a guy who goes all out all the time. You played 4 positions in the majors. 5, sorry. Which one was the hardest to learn?
Well, I don't think any of them were hard to learn because you got to work at defense. Because when I played, there was no DH.
Yeah.
So you had to have a glove. I can tell you which one was the hardest, which one was the easiest. Left field's probably the easiest.
Okay.
I had the most enjoyment with first base, more activity at first base. Right field, I played center field. Third base is probably the toughest because you don't have time to think. It's either do or die at third base because you're so close to the hitter. But they're all fun to play because, there's two phases of sports. One's offense and one's defense. When you got a bat in your hand, you think about offense, and when you got a glove in your hand, you think about defense. So you got to play good defense, or the offense won't count.
For sure, yeah. You got to be an all-around player.
Yeah.
That's the most valuable.
Just work at it. I mean, a lot of people don't work at their craft when they got defense on their mind. They just think that they can just, go through the motions, but you got to put a lot of work into defense. No matter where you're playing.
For sure.
And you just put as much work into defense as you do the batting cage when you're thinking about offense.
Yeah, definitely. Is there a player or a hitter that resembles your style in today's game? Anybody?
No, probably the guy would come the closest, but he's not a switch batter, is Altuve. Because he gets more hits than anybody else, and he always hits over 300. But I was a little more disciplined than him. He's kind of what we would call, he's a great hitter, but we would call him a bad ball hitter. What that means, he swings at a lot of balls out of the strike zone, but he still gets a lot of hits. Roberto Clemente was a bad ball hitter. Yogi Berra was a bad ball hitter. If you're talking to a youngster, you would prefer him swinging his strikes. You have a better chance of hitting if you swing his strikes. But if you don't, you just got to be aggressive.
For sure. We're based out in Chicago. I'm a big Cubs fan. Any impressions of the Cubs in the postseason? I know they went to the NLCS, ended up losing to the Dodgers. What were your kind of
Yeah, they
thoughts?
weren't near as good this year as they were last year. In all phases of the game. Offensively, defensively, pitching, the bullpen, they just weren't as good a ball club. And I think the Cubs kind of forgot, or maybe they just couldn't afford it, which I don't believe is true. They didn't understand the value of Dexter Fowler.
Oh, okay, yeah.
You take a good leadoff man that gets on base almost 40% of the time and take him out of the lineup, and then you're going to start the season with Schwarber leading off. Then you're going to take him out and send him back to the minors. Then you're going to put Anthony Rizzo in the leadoff spot. I just wonder what Joe Maddon was thinking about, because the Cubs didn't manufacture any runs. All their runs came off of home runs.
Yeah.
When Dexter Fowler was there, they got a lot of runs at the top of the order because he could run. He didn't clog up the bases.
Yeah, he walked a lot.
And he stole bases, and he run the bases. You can't have guys hitting first or second clogging up the bases. That's why Bryant only had 70 in the 70s for RBIs. Nobody was ever on.
Very true. And in the postseason, all their runs came on home runs against the Dodgers.
Well, that's the nature of the game today, but still, It's easier if you got guys on base to knock them in. You got to be able to get an RBI occasionally with a ground ball to short, or a fly ball to left, or a ground ball to first base. You got to be able to manufacture runs in that situation.
For sure, for sure. So I thank you for your time.
Okay.
And I really appreciate you giving me the interview. Thank you, Pete Rose.
Let me ask you a question as a Cub fan.
Yeah.
I'm interested. I don't have no details on this.
Go ahead.
Why did Joe Maddon fire all of his coaches?
That is a great question.
Because they were good enough to win last year.
I do have an answer for the pitching coach. I believe Theo Epstein, the GM, or the vice president of operations, he said in his postseason interview that they needed to have a change in philosophy with the pitching staff because they walked far too many guys in the postseason and during the season. He said that the 10% walk rate as a team was the highest in baseball, over 10%. So that kind of goes back to Bosio.
There again, let me defend Bosio because he's working with the pitcher. He's not out there on the mound throwing the ball. So if they're out there walking guys, usually the blame goes on the pitcher, not the pitching coach, because he's the same pitching coach this year as he was last year.
That's true.
And he had virtually the same pitchers without Chapman, right? So it's surprising to me that Theo or anybody would put the blame on one guy.
Yeah, and I think he tried.
But Theo's the boss, and he can get away with that.
He said it was a philosophy deal and then a bit of a personnel deal. I think they're going to try to go out this offseason and get some guys who are strike throwers who are going to challenge guys at the plate.
Yeah, that's a good idea. But there again, if they go out and get strike throwers, so it sounds like this year was Theo's problem because he didn't have strike throwers. And he's the one to put their team together.
That's fair.
So if he gets strike throwers, then the new pitching coach will benefit from that. Correct?
Yeah.
Who is the new pitching coach?
Jim Hickey. From
He's a good
Tampa.
one. He was with Joe down in Tampa.
Yeah.
Isn't that strange how that works?
Connections, I guess.
So maybe did Bosio sign with anybody yet?
As far as I know, he hasn't.
He will.
But he definitely will. He's great.
Yeah, he's a good
he did a
pitcher.
great job in Chicago.
Won a World Series. That's all you try to do.
But yeah, I guess a little bit of a shakeup. I can't tell you why for the other coaches. I know one did take a job elsewhere.
It's always easier to get rid of coaches than players.
True. Very true.
But the players play the game. The coaches don't. Have a good day.
Thank you.